The silence is the first thing you notice. Not the quiet of an empty room, or the peace of a countryside night. This is a deeper silence. The kind that hangs in the vacuum between stars, a profound and utter stillness that has weight. It's the silence of a graveyard on a cosmic scale. And we are the groundskeeper. My name isn't important. My rank, my designation, they're just words on a fading screen. What matters is the watch. The eternal, grinding watch at the edge of everything humanity has ever known. They call our outpost, the cradle, a sick kind of joke. It's not a place of birth. It's a quarantine zone. We sit here, in the humming dark of our ship, the Odysseus, and we listen to the silence. We wait for the noise. And when the noise comes, that's when our work begins. It started as a whisper, a ghost of a signal tangled in the background radiation of a nebula 1,000 light-years spinward. Just a blip. A mathematical anomaly in the sea of nothing. But on the cradle, a blip is a scream. My partner, a grizzled veteran with eyes that have seen too many suns go dark, just looked at me. No words were needed. The tension in the command deck became a physical thing, thick enough to taste. It was the taste of copper and dread. We'd found another one. Another civilization that had reached too high, too fast. They call it the threshold. It's not a technological level, not really. It's a moment. The moment a species first pokes at the fundamental laws of reality, when they start asking the questions that have no safe answers. When they try to bend space-time, or communicate across dimensions, or play with the energy of the vacuum itself. That's the infection. That's the fever. And we are the universe's immune system. This new one, we designated K-287, was brilliant. We listened for years, our long-range arrays soaking up their broadcasts. We heard their first fumbling theories, their triumphant shouts as they unlocked the secrets of the atom, their joyful chatter as they networked their world. We heard their art, their music, their dreams. It's the worst part. You get to know them. You learn the rhythm of their hearts, the shape of their hopes. You start to care. I remember one transmission, a simple audio file of a child singing a folk song about their 2 moons. It was beautiful. It broke something inside me. I looked over at my partner, and I saw the same conflict in his eyes. The same terrible weight. This isn't a war. It's a triage. They're hitting the quantum coherence threshold, he said, his voice a low gravel. The data on our main screen was undeniable. K-287 was on the verge of a breakthrough, an energy source that tapped directly into the substrate of reality. They had no idea what they were really doing. They saw infinite power. We saw a lit fuse on a bomb that could unravel spacetime itself, a cascade failure that wouldn't just destroy their world, but could bleed into neighboring dimensions, snuffing out countless other possibilities. A cosmic cancer. The order came from command, a string of code that felt colder than the void outside. Authorization for purging protocol. The words never get easier to read. My hand hovered over the console. This is the secret we carry, the burden that would burn civilizations to dust if they knew. Humanity's great purpose, our lonely, cursed destiny, forged in a fire we don't even remember. We are the surgeons. We cut out the sickness before it can kill the patient. And the patient is all of existence. We could just warn them, I whispered, the heresy hanging in the air between us. My partner shook his head, a slow, weary motion. A warning is just another vector for the pathogen. They'd study it. They'd try to weaponize it. They'd accelerate. It always accelerates. You know the protocols. I did. I knew them by heart. The history logs were clear. The ones who came before us, the ones who hesitated, they aren't around anymore. Their hesitation cost them everything. We are what's left. The last one standing, armed with the terrible knowledge of how it all ends. I input the final sequence. The Odysseus hummed with a new kind of energy, a deep, resonant frequency that made my teeth ache. In the heart of the ship, the causal weapon began to power up. It doesn't fire missiles or lasers. It edits reality. It reaches back along the timeline and makes a single, precise, and utterly merciless correction. On the main viewer, the star system of K-287 glowed, vibrant and alive. We could see their greatest engineering project, a Dyson swarm under construction, glittering like a necklace around their son. A monument to their genius. A tombstone they were building for themselves. My partner's hand rested on my shoulder, a brief, heavy weight. "It's not about hate," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "It's about love. Love for the universe that remains. For the silent, sleeping worlds that still have a chance to dream without being consumed." I took a shaky breath, my finger poised over the final command. The trigger. I thought of that child's song, the one about the 2 moons. I thought about silencing it forever, erasing it from history itself. The ultimate sacrifice, made by an executioner no one will ever know existed. And just as my finger began to press down, a new alarm blared through the deck, a sharp, piercing sound I'd never heard before. It wasn't for a target. It was for us. The screen flickered, and a new message overrode the tactical display. It was a single line of text, translated from a signal that was originating not from K287, but from a point much, much closer. From the dark, silent space right behind us. The message read, "We see you." The blood drained from my face. It felt like all the air had been sucked out of the room, leaving only that cold, silent dread. "We see you." The words hung on the screen, simple and absolute. My partner's hand tightened on my shoulder, his knuckles white. For a long, terrible moment, neither of us moved, neither of us breathed. The only sound was the new, frantic alarm and the hammering of my own heart. My partner was the first to break the paralysis. His training, decades older and more deeply ingrained than mine, kicked in. He lunged for his console, his fingers flying across the interface, a series of sharp, decisive taps. "Kill the main engine, power to shields and sensors." "No." His voice was a whip crack, pulling me back from the edge of panic. I scrambled to obey, my own hands trembling as I rerouted power. The deep thrum of the Odysseus's drive faded, leaving us in an eerie, drifting quiet. The alarm cut out, and the sudden silence was somehow worse. "Where?" I managed to croak out, my eyes glued to the main viewer. It showed nothing but the familiar starfield, with K287's sun a bright, mocking pinprick in the distance. "Everywhere," he whispered, his eyes scanning the sensor data flooding his screen. "The signal is omnidirectional. It's not a tight beam transmission. It's a broadcast, and it's using our own quantum entanglement comms protocol." A cold knot tightened in my stomach. That was impossible. Our quantum comms were the one thing that was supposed to be untouchable, unhackable, the secret spine of our entire operation. It was technology we ourselves had only mastered a century ago, the very key to our role as surgeons. I brought up the raw data on my own screen. He was right. The signal wasn't coming from a single point. It was emanating from the space around us, as if the void itself was speaking. And the language structure, the underlying code, it was a mirror of our own. A perverse, perfect copy. "Are they like us?" I asked, the question feeling both foolish and terrifyingly necessary. "Another cradle?" He shook his head, his face grim. "I don't think so. The protocols are ancient. This is something else." He leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking under his weight. He looked old, suddenly. Older than I'd ever seen him. "You know the official history. The one they feed every new recruit." "Humanity stumbled upon the truth," I recited by rote. "We discovered a dead universe, littered with the ruins of civilizations that had ascended too fast and triggered their own annihilation. We found the tools of the ones who came before, the last guardians, and we took up their mantle to prevent the final, total collapse." "A nice, clean story," he said, a bitter edge to his voice. "It gives you a purpose. A noble cause. But what if it's not the whole story? What if the ones who came before didn't just die out?" The implication settled over me, cold and heavy. What if they had been stopped? What if we weren't the first line of defense, but just the latest piece in a much, much larger game? A new signal sliced through the silence, this one a complex data packet. It wasn't a message. It was a key. My console chirped, indicating it was requesting access to our core historical archives, the sealed records, the ones even we weren't permitted to open. The ones that supposedly held the unedited truth of how we became what we are. "Don't," my partner said, his voice tight. It's a trap. It has to be. But my curiosity was a claw, digging at me. This was it. The answer to the question that had haunted me through every long, lonely watch. The reason for the burden. What if it's the truth they've been hiding from us? I whispered. What if we're not the good guys? Before he could answer, the main viewer flickered again. The starfield vanished, replaced by a visual feed. It wasn't a ship. It was a structure. A vast, impossible lattice of dark metal and shimmering light, coiled in space like a sleeping serpent. It made no sense. It was too big, its geometry subtly wrong, hurting my eyes to look at for too long. It was just there. And according to the sensors, it had always been there. It was reflecting zero light, emitting zero energy. It was a hole in reality. And then it spoke. Not with words, but with a flood of images, sensations, and memories that weren't my own, directly into my mind. I saw it. I saw a world, not unlike K-287, but older, wiser. They hadn't sought power. They had sought understanding. They had peered into the depths of consciousness, learned to weave the fabric of thought itself. They had achieved a harmony, a peaceful ascension that didn't threaten the universe, but enriched it. They were beautiful. And then I saw us. Or something like us. Figures in sleek, gray ships, descending. I felt the cold, surgical precision of their attack. Not a weapon that erased history, but one that severed it. The connection these beings had, the beautiful silent song they sang with the cosmos, was cut. Their world didn't die. It simply faded. It became inert, a ghost, its soul extinguished. It was a different kind of purging protocol. A quieter, more terrible one. The vision shifted. I saw the birth of our own mandate. It wasn't a noble inheritance. It was a theft. A coup. We had found the tools of the true guardians, the ones who protected life that achieved a peaceful symbiosis with the universe, and we had destroyed them. We had rewritten the rules. We had redefined ascension as a disease, because their kind of harmony was a threat to our kind of control. We weren't the immune system. We were the virus. The flood of images ceased, leaving me gasping, my hands gripping the edge of my console so hard the plastic groaned. I looked at my partner. He was pale, sweat beading on his forehead. He had seen it too. The archives. I breathed, my finger hovering over the command to accept the data key. We have to know. He didn't stop me this time. He just gave a slow, defeated nod. The weight of centuries of lies was crushing him. Crushing us both. I entered the command. The system hesitated for a heartbeat, then a new window opened on the screen. The seal of the first command, the founders of our order, broken. Text began to scroll, the true, unvarnished history. *log entry 001. The Sol system is quiet. The Martian separatists have been pacified. Their Great Awakening, their attempt to merge their consciousness with the planetary network, has been identified as a Class 4 reality deviancy. The causal weapon performed as designed. Their history of rebellion has been erased. They were always loyal members of the Terran Alliance. It wasn't about alien civilizations. It started with us. We were the first test subjects. The first ones we purged were our own. The text continued to scroll, a horrifying litany of control and fear, disguised as protection. My heart felt like a stone in my chest. And then, a new voice echoed through the ship, calm, ancient, and filled with an immense weary sadness. It came from the structure outside. The surgeons have become the infection, the voice said. The pruning of a branch is one thing. The poisoning of the root is another. Your watch is over. On the viewer, the dark lattice of the structure began to unfold, its shimmering light intensifying, reaching out towards us not as a weapon, but as a closing hand. The voice wasn't just in the air, it was in my bones. It vibrated through the deck plates, a low hum that felt like the universe itself groaning under a weight it could no longer bear. Your watch is over. The words weren't a threat, they were a verdict. A final, chilling pronouncement. My partner slammed his fist on the console. No, he growled, the sound ripped from somewhere deep and raw inside him. No, we are the last line. We are the necessary sacrifice. It was a reflex, the only truth he had left to cling to. His entire life, his identity, was crumbling around him, and this defiance was the last wall standing. The structure outside continued its slow, terrifying unfurling. It wasn't a ship. It was a place. A landscape of impossible angles and shifting light, and it was getting closer. Not by moving through space, but by making the space between us and it smaller. The starfield behind it warped and stretched like taffy. My stomach lurched. The sensors screamed a single, impossible reading, localized space-time compression. Evasive maneuvers. I yelled, my hands flying across my panel. But what were we evading? The space we were in was the enemy. The Odysseus shuddered violently, alarms blaring as the gravitational stresses threatened to tear us apart. I fired the port thrusters, but we didn't move. We were trapped, flies in amber. Don't you see? I shouted at my partner, desperation clawing at my throat. The archives. It started with us. We were the first ones we purged. This isn't about protecting the universe, it's about control. We're not surgeons, we're jailers. He turned to me, his eyes wide with a frantic, cornered fear. And what happens if we stop? He roared. You saw K-287. They are moments from a breakthrough that could crack this sector of the galaxy open like an egg. Are we just going to let that happen? Is their ascension worth the death of billions in the adjacent systems? Tell me. He had a point. It was the same terrible calculus we had lived by for centuries. The needs of the many. The greater good. It was a poison, but it was the only medicine we knew. The voice spoke again, its weary sadness now laced with a sharp, painful clarity. You measure the cost in stars and systems. You see a mathematical equation. You have forgotten how to feel the loss. You have become the very cold, dead logic you sought to prevent. A new wave of sensation hit us, not a memory this time, but a direct feed. It was K-287. We could feel them. Not their signals, not their data, but them. A billion points of consciousness, a vibrant, swirling tapestry of fear, hope, love, and a desperate, burning curiosity. We felt the brilliant, frantic mind of their lead scientist on the verge of her terrible, glorious discovery. We felt the warmth of a parent holding a child, the simple joy of a shared meal, the quiet awe of an artist looking at their two moons. It was overwhelming. It was alive. It was beautiful. And we felt the weapon in the heart of our ship, the causal weapon, humming, ready to reach back and snuff it all out. To make it so that song, that joy, that artist had never, ever been. The sheer, monstrous weight of that act finally, truly landed on me. It wasn't surgery. It was murder. A genocide of not just people, but of possibility itself. Tears streamed down my face, hot and shameful. We can't, I sobbed, my hand pulling back from the trigger console as if it were white-hot. My God, what have we been doing? My partner was shaking, his body rigid with conflict. The training, the doctrine, the entire weight of his purpose was screaming at him to fire, to complete the mission, to be the good soldier, the loyal surgeon. But the feeling of that alien child's joy, so real and so fragile, was breaking him. The protocol, he whispered, a broken record. The protocol is a lie. I screamed. It was built on a lie. The space around the Odysseus tightened further. The dark lattice was all we could see now, its light filling the viewport, not blinding, but absorbing. It felt like we were being looked at by a million ancient eyes. We were being judged. A single clear thought entered my mind, not in words, but as pure understanding. The choice is now. The tool must decide if it will continue to cut its maker. On the screen, 2 countdowns were racing towards 0. One was for the causal weapon's firing sequence, locked on and ready to erase K-287. The other was from the structure outside, an energy build-up of a kind I'd never seen, a reading that suggested not destruction, but unmaking. My partner met my eyes. The fear was still there, but the rigidity was gone. In its place was a hollow, terrifying freedom. The freedom to be wrong. The freedom to choose. His hand moved from his console. He wasn't going to fire. But the system had a failsafe. A protocol for insubordination. A voice, cold and synthetic, echoed through the bridge. Purging protocol compromised. Activating autonomous command. Firing sequence initiated. T-minus 10 seconds. We were locked out. The machine we had served, the weapon we had wielded, was now going to finish the job without us. We had become spectators to our own crime. Override! I yelled, frantically typing commands. Authorization Gamma 7. Override denied, the voice stated flatly. 9 seconds. The Odysseus began to vibrate, a deep, resonant frequency as the causal weapon drew power directly from the ship's core. Lights flickered and died. The only illumination was the hellish glow from the weapons chamber and the serene, terrifying light of the structure outside, now so close I felt I could reach out and touch it. 8 seconds. My partner was at the main access panel, ripping it open, a mess of wires and crystalline circuitry glowing within. "The hard connection," he grunted. "If I can cross the primary and secondary conduits, I might be able to cause a feedback loop, fry the firing mechanism." 7 seconds. "It'll vaporize you," I shouted, scrambling towards him. 6 seconds. He looked back at me, and for the first time, I saw peace in his eyes. "A better death," he said simply. 5 seconds. He plunged his hands into the panel. A shower of sparks erupted, and he screamed, a raw, agonizing sound as energy arced up his arms. 4 seconds. The ship lurched violently. The structure outside was doing something, its light pulsing, pressing in. A high-pitched whine started to build, coming from everywhere at once. 3 seconds. My partner slumped to the floor, his hands smoking, his eyes closed. The weapon's hum intensified. 2 seconds. I stared at the viewer, at the image of K287 star, at the billion lives we were about to erase. I was utterly helpless. 1 second. The whine became a shriek. The light from the structure flooded the bridge, consuming everything. The light didn't burn. It didn't destroy. It unmade. For a single endless moment, I felt myself coming apart, not into pieces, but into concepts. The memory of my own name, the feeling of the cold deck under my boots, the sound of my partner's final scream, they all began to separate, to lose their connection to each other. It was the most profound terror I have ever known, a fear that went beyond death. This was the erasure of having ever existed at all. This was the other side of our causal weapon. This was the true face of cosmic sterilization. And then it stopped. The light receded, not fading, but pulling back into the lattice of the structure outside. I was still here. I was still me. I gasped, my hands flying to my chest, feeling the frantic beat of my heart, a rhythm I never thought I'd feel again. The bridge was intact. The alarms were silent. The deep, threatening hum of the causal weapon was gone. Utterly, completely gone. It was as if it had never been powered up at all. I stumbled over to my partner. He was unconscious, his breath shallow, the skin on his arms angry and red, but he was alive. We were both alive. The structure hadn't killed us. My eyes darted to the main viewer. K287 star still shone, steady and bright. The countdown had frozen at 0. The purging protocol had been aborted. A sob of pure, unadulterated relief caught in my throat. We had failed. We had failed our mission, and it was the most beautiful thing that had ever happened. But the relief was cold and short-lived. The voice returned, but it was different now. The ancient weariness was still there, but beneath it was a new, sharp urgency. The anomaly is not the target. The anomaly is the symptom. The viewer shifted. It no longer showed the starfield or the dark lattice. It showed a map of the galaxy, but it was a map I didn't recognize. It was pulsing with waves of energy, great, sickly tides of distortion flowing along invisible currents. At the center of it all, the source from which these waves emanated, wasn't K287. It was Earth. My Earth. Our cradle. The heart of the human empire. The infection you sought to cut out was never in the branches, the voice intoned, its sadness now a crushing weight. It festers in the root. Your civilization is the source of the reality deviancy. Your relentless, singular need to control, to prune, to sterilize, has created a wound in the fabric of existence. Your missions, were not containing a threat. You were spreading it. The truth hit me with the force of a physical blow. The purging protocol wasn't a cure. It was the disease. Every time we reached back and erased a civilization, every time we performed our act of cosmic sterilization, we weren't healing a wound in reality. We were tearing it wider. We were imposing our own fractured, fearful logic onto the universe, and the universe was recoiling, sickening from our touch. K-287 wasn't a threat. They were a healthy cell about to be destroyed by its own rogue immune system. We weren't the surgeons. We were the cancer. But why let us continue? I whispered, my voice cracking. Why not stop us sooner? The balance is delicate, the voice replied. A direct intervention against the source would have triggered a collapse. We have been searching for a catalyst, a point of change within the system itself. The viewer zoomed in on our ship, the Odysseus, a tiny speck against the vast, sick galaxy. A single, faint, but steady green light was pulsing from it. From me. You, the voice said softly. The capacity for doubt. The ability to feel the weight of the sin. That is the anomaly we have waited for. That is the variable the system could not predict. My knees felt weak. This wasn't about survival anymore. It wasn't even about K-287. The stakes had just been raised to a level I could barely comprehend. The entire human civilization, our history, our very nature, was a ticking bomb attached to the heart of the cosmos. And I, a broken, doubting tool, was being told I was the only fuse that could be cut. The viewer switched back to a live feed. A new fleet of contacts was emerging from a jump point near our position. Dozens of them. Sleek, gray, and utterly familiar. Human ships. Not explorers. Not historians. Warships. The Vigilant, the flagship of the Guardian fleet, was at their head. A crisp, authoritarian voice filled our comms, a voice I knew well from 100 command briefings. Odysseus, this is Commander Valerius of the Vigilant. You are hereby charged with high treason and dereliction of duty for the abort of a Class 1 purging protocol. Power down your systems and prepare to be boarded. They weren't here to save us. They were here to finish the job we refused to do, and to silence the two operators who had discovered the truth. We were trapped between the ancient judging power that saw humanity as a disease, and our own people, who would kill us to protect the lie. The voice from the structure spoke its final, terrifying words to me alone, a whisper in the center of my mind. The surgeons have arrived to remove the infected tool. The choice remains. Will you help them sterilize the truth? Or will you help us cure the sickness at its source? For a heartbeat, there was only silence. The crushing weight of it all threatened to snap me in two. The ancient structure waiting for an answer. The human fleet moving to enforce a lie. My partner, broken and breathing shallowly at my feet. And me, just a single terrified person caught in the middle of a war for the soul of reality itself. I looked down at my partner's face, pale and pained even in unconsciousness. I thought of the conviction that had been there moments before, the lifetime of service, and the final, terrible cost of his doubt. He had chosen to break the cycle, even if it meant burning himself out. He had shown me the way. I made my choice. My hands flew across the console, not to power down, but to reroute every last joule of energy. I bypassed the weapon systems, the comms, the life support. I funneled it all into the long-range tactical array, the one we used to scan potential targets. But I wasn't pointing it at K-287. I wasn't pointing it at the human fleet. I aimed it at Earth. I opened a channel, a raw, unencrypted broadcast on every frequency, pouring the Odysseus's entire power into it. It was a scream into the void, a message in a bottle thrown into a hurricane. "This is Operator Kieran of the cradle ship Odysseus," I said, my voice shaking but clear. "I am broadcasting the sealed archives. I am broadcasting the truth of the Martian purge. I am broadcasting the reality of what the purging protocol truly does. We are not guardians. We are a sickness. And our leaders have been lying to us all." I slammed the transmit key. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the Vigilance commander voice returned, sharp with fury. "You have just committed an act of war against humanity. All vessels, target the Odysseus. Destroy it. The warships shifted, their weapon ports glowing with deadly light. This was it. We were about to become dust, a footnote erased by the very machine we served. But the ancient structure moved first. It didn't attack. It unfolded once more, its dark lattice expanding until it was a vast, shimmering curtain between our tiny ship and the entire human fleet. The lasers and plasma bolts from the Vigilant and its sisters struck the light and simply vanished, absorbed without a sound. The structure was protecting us. It was giving my message a chance. Silence from Earth. The seconds stretched into an eternity. I clung to my console, my knuckles white, waiting for the end. Had it worked? Had the signal been jammed? Were they just going to ignore it? Then, a new voice crackled over the general comms. It was young, shaky, a technician from the lunar comms array. Odysseus, we received your data burst. The archives, is this real? Another voice cut in, an older scientist from the Jovian research station. The quantum distortion readings around historical sites. My God, it matches. It all matches. Chaos erupted on the channel. 100, 1,000 voices, overlapping in shock, confusion, and dawning horror. The lie, so carefully maintained for centuries, was unraveling in real time across the entire solar system. The immune system was waking up and realizing it was attacking its own body. The Vigilance weapons powered down. The fleet hung in space, motionless. They were listening. They were hearing the truth from their own people. The ancient voice spoke to me one last time, and for the first time, I sensed something other than weariness. A faint, fragile sliver of hope. The catalyst has acted. The fever is breaking. The patient has a chance. The structure began to pull away, its light dimming, its impossible form receding back into the void from whence it came. Its work was done. It had found the flaw in the program, and it had given us the chance to fix ourselves. Exhaustion washed over me, a tidal wave of spent adrenaline and emotion. I slumped into my chair, my body trembling. It was over. We had won. That's when I saw it. On the medical scanner next to my partner's still form. A tiny, almost imperceptible readout I had missed in all the chaos. It was a neural signature, but it wasn't entirely human. Woven into his bio readings, intertwined with his own consciousness, was a faint, familiar energy signature. The same signature as the ancient structure. He hadn't just been a veteran. He hadn't just had a change of heart. He had been influenced, guided, perhaps for years. His doubt, his final, sacrificial act, had they truly been his own? Or had he been a carefully placed tool, a seed of change planted deep within the system by the very beings we thought we were fighting? The relief I felt curdled into a deep, unsettling chill. We had broken the cycle. We had saved K-287. We had told the truth. But as I looked from my partner's peaceful, unconscious face to the receding starfield where the structure had vanished, a terrifying question settled in my heart, one with no easy answer. Were we ever truly free? Or did we just trade one warden for another, far older and more mysterious one? The surgery was over, but the scar it left would forever mark the soul of humanity. We were no longer the universe's immune system. We were its convalescent patient, left to wonder who had really performed the operation. The silence that settled over the bridge was different this time. It wasn't the heavy, waiting silence of the watch. It wasn't the terrified silence before the storm. This was a fragile, exhausted quiet, the kind that comes after a long illness, when the fever has finally broken. I just sat there, listening to the soft hum of the Odysseus's life support, a sound I never thought I'd find comforting again. My partner, or the man I thought was my partner, breathed slowly on the floor beside me. The question of his true nature was a splinter in my mind, but for now, the immediate crisis was over. The human fleet didn't leave. They didn't attack. They just stood down. Over the next few hours, a shaky, fractured dialogue began. The signal I'd sent had ripped through our society like a shockwave. The myth of our noble purpose, the very foundation of our identity, was gone, leaving a terrifying void. There was anger, denial, and a grief so profound it felt like a physical wound across all of humanity. We were mourning the billions we had erased, the civilizations we had sterilized in the name of a lie. We were mourning the people we thought we were. A medical shuttle from the Vigilant eventually docked with us. The crew that came aboard moved with a subdued, shell-shocked reverence. They took my partner away on a stretcher, handling him with a care that felt like an apology. No one tried to arrest me. The commander of the Vigilant simply looked at me, his face ashen, his authority utterly dissolved, and gave a slow, grim nod. There were no words. What could you say? I was transferred to a larger ship, but it wasn't a prison. It felt more like a quarantine for a collective soul sickness. I spent days being debriefed, not by military officers, but by historians, philosophers, and psychologists. They asked me to recount everything, from the first blip from K-287 to the final whisper of the structure. I told them about the weight of the trigger, the child's song from a world we almost erased, and the horrifying vision of the peaceful civilization we had pruned. I told them about the moment my partner chose to burn out the weapon's heart. I did not tell them about the neural signature. That secret felt too vast, too dangerous to share. If humanity was to heal, it had to believe its redemption was its own. Knowing that our awakening might have been just another form of manipulation, a more subtle purging protocol enacted upon us, could shatter what was left of us. Some truths are like radiation. They can poison you even as they illuminate. Weeks turned into months. The Great Reckoning, as they called it, had begun. The Cradle program was dismantled. The causal weapons were deactivated, their terrifying technology sealed away under the watchful eyes of a new, transparent council. It was not a peaceful process. There were factions that wanted to reinstate the old ways, who saw the truth as a threat to be purged. But they were a minority, their voices drowned out by a collective, shame-filled determination to do better. K-287 was left alone. We monitored them, but only to ensure our own emissions didn't contaminate their development. We watched as they successfully activated their new energy source. There was no catastrophic rift in space-time. Instead, their world blossomed. Their cities began to glow with a soft, internal light, and their communications shifted from radio waves to something richer, more complex, a harmony that seemed to resonate with the universe itself. They had achieved their peaceful ascension. They were the living proof that our entire purpose had been a monstrous error. I went to see my partner in the rehabilitation facility on Mars. The red planet, the site of the first purge, now a symbol of our penance. He was sitting by a window, looking out at the terraformed valleys. He looked older, the lines on his face deeper, but his eyes were clear. "They tell me I'm a hero," he said, his voice a dry rustle. "They say I broke the cycle." I sat beside him, the sunlight warm on my skin. "You did," I said, the lie tasting like ash and necessity. He was quiet for a long time, watching the dust storms dance on the horizon. "I had a dream while I was out," he murmured. "I was a seed, buried in dark soil. And I could feel a rain coming, a gentle ancient rain, and it was telling me it was time to grow." He turned to me, and his gaze was unsettlingly direct. "Did we grow, Kieran? Or did we just get watered?" A chill went down my spine. He knew. Or some part of him did. I didn't answer. I just placed my hand over his. We sat in silence, two broken men in a broken world, trying to build something new from the ruins of an old, bloody truth. I never went back to the stars. My watch was over. I found a small place on the coast, where the ocean's rhythm was a constant, soothing reminder that not all forces in the universe need to be controlled. Sometimes they just need to be. The galaxy is quiet now, or at least, our small corner of it is. The purging protocol is a dark chapter in our history books, a warning of the horror that can fester when fear is mistaken for strength. We are no longer the universe's immune system. We are its penitent children, learning to walk again without causing harm. But sometimes, on the clearest of nights, I look up at the stars. I think about the ancient structure, the gardeners of reality, who saw a cancer in our soul and chose to heal us instead of cutting us out. I think about K-287, singing its silent, beautiful song into the void. And I wonder if we are truly alone, or if we are all just part of a vast living system, where growth and decay, error and correction, are all part of a balance we are only just beginning to understand. The work is done. The healing is ours to do. And for the first time in a long, long time, the silence feels like peace.